Thank you all for your flexibility on being in this front room. I think it's a really beautiful spot for our annual Commissioners Forum. And Happy New Year to you all. Thanks for coming back to Hourglass. How many of you are here for the first time? Okay, thanks for joining. How many of you are here for the first Commissioners Forum with Hourglass? Okay, wonderful. As usual, I like to share a little bit about who we are, what we're doing, and then also share about our Commissioners Forum. It's the only one that we do each year. So Hourglass is here to provide relevant, reliable information to the community. We are nonpartisan in nature, but we still like to have our local elected officials come and speak to you all about what they've been up to. The Commissioners Forum is one that we've been doing since 2010. We have each year invited our commissioners to come and speak to the public about what they've accomplished in the past year. In past years, we've asked them what keeps them up at night. I won't be asking you that this year, but that's one that they've responded to several times. Questions about the future, questions about, what we want to understand about what they're working on representing us in county government. So before I, set the further scene, I just would love to have a round of applause for all three of our commissioners coming today. Thank you. So to sort of prepare myself, this is my second year facilitating our Commissioners Forum, and I usually watch a video from years past. If you're not familiar, we upload all of these to YouTube so we can watch them all. This morning I was watching one from COVID, which was virtual. It was Commissioner D'Agostino's first Commissioners Forum. And it's interesting to see kind of how things have evolved throughout the years, what sorts of questions continue to come up, what sorts of questions we have answers to at this point. But one thing that's been very important to us at Hourglass is trust building. And so I want to share with you how we've sort of built that trust throughout the years. One of the things that we do each year, we ask the commissioners if they're willing to join us. And we are very grateful that they choose to come and speak to you all. Another thing that we do is we share the questions with them ahead of time. So there are no curveballs coming from my end today. The first half of our session today will be 3 questions that I'll be asking our commissioners to respond to. And around 12:40, if I'm being ambitious with time, we'll transition over to audience questions. So hopefully you all have some questions that you'd like to ask, and then we'll wrap up. One note that I'd love to share before we get started, I'm being a little stricter with timekeeping today just so that we can stay on track. And so I have some help today. Over here is Alyssa Daly. She is a junior at Dickinson College. She's an education and American Studies major. So she will be timekeeping for me. I'll clarify each question, how much time each commissioner has to speak. And then when you hear the time go off, please finish your sentence. We'll pass it on to the next person. As I go through too as well, I'll just clarify the order so that each person gets to start a different question. Before we start, I'd like to thank our First Friday Forum sponsors, Rogers & Associates, for making these forums possible, Millersville and the Ware Center for our beautiful, lovely space each time, Shoemaker for our live streaming services, and Caleb Bornman, who you'll see moving throughout the room, who does our event photography. Okay, let's get started. We will go easy order. Alice, Ray, Josh for this first question. Each commissioner has 3 minutes to respond to this question, and all I'd like to know is, what are you most proud of accomplishing in 2025? And what's a goal you had that maybe didn't come to fruition?
And we're off? Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting us. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you to the Hourglass. Thank you to the sponsors as well. So in terms of really thinking about this question, it was difficult to think about what priority and what I wanted to really say on my top. Well, I do have 3. So I have 3 minutes, and I have 3 that I felt like I couldn't just leave behind any one of them. Well, first and foremost, there's actually four, because my first one is I want to talk about how proud I am of county employees. It's amazing the work that they do. A lot of them do some really tough work and really goes unseen. So I just want to recognize them when I think about what I'm proud of and who I'm proud of. I hope this coming year, too, we can really highlight a lot of the work that they do a little bit more, because a lot of people don't even know what departments are part of county government, and certainly then don't know the good work that the employees do. And then next, I am proud of the prison project, where we are right now, and the design, and I know that's on the agenda. That's one of the questions you gave us in advance to talk about that, so we'll be talking about that in more detail. But I want to add that to my list of what I'm proud of. I am proud of the design we have right now that we'll talk about in a little bit. The next one is really excited about the working closely. In this past year, we've been working with the Lancaster County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Justin is here. On starting the process around a strategic plan for looking at homelessness and housing for Lancaster County. Really glad about the progress that's been made so far on putting information together related to that. There's been surveys done. Some of you have taken part in that. There's been key informant interviews and focus groups. There was somewhat of a stall because of the federal budget issues, and then the state impasse, and then most recently what happened with the HUD and the changes in the NOFO, which is really connected with homelessness. So been a little bit stall in that, but please know that it should come out. We're hoping somewhere, towards maybe the end of the spring, but we want to be really intentional, particularly because of the changes in what we're looking at doing. It's a lot of great work that's been done already. This plan will come out, and we're planning on it being bold and really talking about if our community really wants to take on the issue of addressing homelessness and affordable housing, what would it take? So it's for the entire county. Pieces of it will be the redevelopment, but it's more of laying out a bold sort of what are best practices and what we need to do. So keep an eye on that. That should be coming out shortly, but I'm really glad about the progress we've made so far. And then lastly, I also want to mention, I believe this year with the Youth Intervention Center that the county runs, I think that's one area that when I've been out and about talking to people, don't even realize that it's part of the county. But I'm really glad, proud of the work that the employees have been doing there. I think it's transformational. What they have been intentionally doing, they started doing it several years ago, but really start looking at trauma-informed practices and putting those practices into action in a very collaborative way. They've been working with the courts, and then in the next couple of weeks, we will be seeing a behavioral health practice. One of our local providers actually have a mental health practice at the Youth Intervention Center. Very proud of that.
Thank you, Alice. Commissioner D'Agostino.
Well, look at this. I actually agree with Alice on those things. It shouldn't surprise you, actually. We actually agree on a lot of things. Okay. So I, too, want to give a shout-out to our team. And look, when we talk about things we're proud of, we got to talk about that nothing happens in a vacuum, that nothing happens because he spoke it, I spoke it, she spoke it. It happens in a team atmosphere. Having said that, there are things that some of us work on because we have divided county government up into liaisonships, so to speak, some areas that we focus on. So I'm going to give you several, quite frankly, things that we've been working on that you probably don't even know, because they don't get reported on. So I'm head of the MPO, the Transportation Coordinating Committee, and that committee has been doing a lot of work. There's a lot of people that have been working through this. We've recently revised the Transportation Improvement Program selection process. It used to be, quite frankly, that we didn't really know how, we didn't prioritize very well. There was no real process to prioritize projects. That was an effort that we have implemented. And the other thing we've done this past year was adopted the very first countywide traffic safety action plan that will hopefully, the goal of that is to reduce serious crashes and deaths throughout Lancaster County. We're working with the SCTA, the Transit Authority, on a draft microtransit feasibility study. Quite frankly, it's the potentially most impactful relook at how we do transit in Lancaster County. We appointed the very first Freight Advisory Committee that is looking at how freight, goods and services move throughout Lancaster County and in the region. Generally speaking, we just heard from our General Services Director about a grant that we became aware of that we could apply for energy savings, a federal grant, over $400,000. Our team went to work, decided how we could potentially do this and save not just money, one instance, but over time. And I'm happy to say that $400,000 plus will save over $145,000 of taxpayer money a year. So shout out to them. Ag Preserve, we reached the 125,000 acre mark. Can't do that without the folks who own farms, municipalities, and funders, quite frankly, including the taxpayers. Elections, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but we had a great, smooth couple elections last year, and I know that's what we should expect, but the problem is, ever since Act 77, all through the Commonwealth, there have been issues because of the complexity. But we're doing very well here in Lancaster County. It's a good team effort. And I'll stop there then.
Thank you.
I like that alarm. We do a lot of these, and it's nice to have the alarm because all of us could talk for a long time about it. I also want to thank the Hourglass and the sponsors for having us today. It's good to be back. I like this forum, too. Maybe we want to do this permanently. We kind of break up county government depending on our background, and we're liaisons to different parts. I do a lot of the public safety stuff. Chair of the prison board, the Youth Intervention Center, 911, emergency management, because I'm a former prosecutor. And there is some really good data coming out of 2025 on public safety in Lancaster County that county government's proud of, we should be proud of all across the county. We normally in Lancaster County have 10 to 20 homicides a year. 2025, we had 4 criminal homicides across 550,000 people. That's incredible. There is a national reduction going on, but we are certainly lower than that. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but county government, public safety agencies, not sure why I'm going in and out.
Let's trade for now.
They're cutting me off already. County government and public safety agencies are a piece of that. There's lots of other pieces as well. Overdose deaths. When Alice and I, before Alice was a commissioner, we were the co-chairs of an organization called Joining Forces to take on the opioid overdose problem back in 2017. At that time, we had 168 deaths that year. This year, we're going to be, when we have final data, around mid-30s. That is also incredible. That's an 80% reductions. Prison suicide, something I care a lot about, I've worked on. When I came into office, we were having multiple prison suicides a year. It's been almost 4 years since we've had any. You can always have one if someone's really committed, but we've done a lot of work there. The Youth Detention Center, in 2023, we were averaging 20 youths detained, 2024, 17, 2025, 12. That's a big reduction. We've had a reduction in overall criminal cases at the MDJ level and the Court of Common Pleas levels. So a lot of good things going on in the Lancaster County criminal justice system that you don't necessarily hear about. There's national things going on well too, but I'm proud of Lancaster County for that. As far as the second half of the question, it was basically things that didn't come to fruition or things we can improve upon. The state budget impasse was a huge challenge for county government this year. There's no reason for that. We need to, as elected officials, do our duty, pass a budget. And I worry about development in Lancaster County. I know a lot of you care about this too. We're #1 in the nation for farmland preservation, but getting that right, that balance right, and making sure we continue to preserve what God gave us here in Lancaster County, our farmland and our forest land, which the Conservancy is doing a great job on. Perfect timing. Thank you.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll go with the order of Commissioner D'Agostino, Commissioner Parsons, and Commissioner Yoder. And we've allotted 5 minutes per speaker because this is a bigger question than the first one. We want to talk about budget and tax strategy in 2026. Lancaster County is facing significant budgetary strain and is considering roughly a 10% property tax increase for the first time in over a decade. What specific contingency plans do you have in place to mitigate the need for a large property tax increase in 2026? How will you balance short-term financial pressures with long-term fiscal stability?
Okay, I guess I start. Well, 2026 budget's adopted. There was a 10% tax increase, first time in 13 years. I think I'm going to couch my top. This is a broad topic, obviously, budgeting and finance, which I have a background in at the municipal level. So I want to break my comments down into three categories, three broad categories in 5 minutes. Try to do it in 5 minutes. The past, the present, the future. The past is a prologue to the present. What happened in the past has got us to where we are today, and then today also could be a prologue for the future, working with the best possible information we have. So the past. So let's look at the fact that up until COVID, Lancaster County had budget surpluses, which means that estimated revenues are going to be over estimated expenses. Actually, at the year end, actual end result was actually a little bit more revenue than over expenses. That helped build, quite frankly, and we're talking for maybe 10 years, that helped build reserves, which were badly needed by Lancaster County. Those reserves were then used to help with cash flow and also dealing with emergencies, think state budget impasse, but also to create the county's first capital improvement and reserve plan. Things changed after COVID for reasons which we understand. And here we are. Businesses, governments, us individually have had to deal with the massive changes of costs. So we're now dealing with that in the present. And in fact, the only change other than that was that Lancaster County didn't add new programs and services. We actually consolidated. So these cost drivers were not anything that we were doing. In fact, we were doing the opposite. So here we are in the present. In the 2025 budget, I could say that, I said back when we were looking at it that it was a budget that maybe not everybody wanted, but it was a budget we needed and provided for the most needs of the taxpayers, including not increasing the tax burden at that time. At the end of 2024, inflation, historic, right? Not a time to be looking at raising taxes. And we had a $5.4 million budget deficit that we were looking at that time. That was a prediction. I can tell you that as of right now, that will either be even or less than $1 million. That's constructive to know. So what we also did in 2025 as a team, and mostly our staff, with some guidance from all of us, was reviewed services to ensure that they were in line with mandates and requirements and best practices. We sought increased efficiency and effectiveness within and across departments so that it can lead to cost savings. Evaluated staffing positions, implemented focused hiring within each department and agency to determine if adjustments were possible. And then look at the first two things I mentioned. We analyzed about using non-tax revenue sources to offset the cost of providing services. And then evaluated and adjusted the county's external discretionary grant making. These were all things that were done in 25 to help bring that deficit down. It was constructive because it actually did bring the deficit down. It's instructive because we know that we could do more along those lines in 2026, which brings us to the future. Oh, one more thing about the present. We are still near historic levels of reserves. I want you to know that. And we still have a AA2 bond rating, which is the highest in county history. And our retirement fund is nearly fully funded. Those are all things that we should be proud of. Future, no illusions here. We have challenging work ahead, like most folks. Eliminating and reducing the deficit is our priority this year, and continuing this prison project for the future. Again, looking at the constructive and instructive work we did in 2025, we have brought on a new financial advisor, the first time in the county history we know of, to help us with the project, but also help with these other things. And we have a new controller, and I look forward, as my colleagues do, working with the controller and our financial advisor. I put forth a proposal of looking at consolidating our financial services in Lancaster County, as other counties have done, into a department. We have a vacancy in the budget services department head. Now's the time to be doing it, and I think we can see where that will lead to better outcomes in the future. I will end by saying I believe there's a balance between what we believe that the future holds, providing required and desired services in the most efficient and effective way possible, and the tax rate that gets you there, but also being fair to the taxpayer. You've got a balance of those things. And it's a challenge and a judgment call at the end of the day. But I will never forget it's someone else's money. And we do look at all those things holistically. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm next. Well, thank you for the question. Although I will slightly gently push back at the sort of the premise of the question, the significant budgetary strain, because that I think kind of has editorial comments in that. I will say that, every year since I've been a commissioner, there has been budgetary strain. That's the nature of going through the budget process. There is a budget process that's laid out for us in the county code, which is state law. We go through it every year, and those debates are, I think, valuable. And we have a process that we follow, which we have to follow, and we have those public debates. And just because you have public debates doesn't mean that there is some kind of problem. In fact, I find those public debates to be helpful. So, the county has not raised taxes prior to this year since 2013. The 10 years I've been on the board, we have not done that. During that time, when I came into office, I think we had around $3 million of cash in the bank. We now have around $70 million. We've built up our reserves. We created a capital improvement plan. So we are in a very healthy financial position, other than the fact that one 2013 dollar is now worth about 60 cents. So because of that massive inflation over the last few years, the curves, you have the revenue curve remaining essentially the same or growing a little bit, and then you have the cost curve growing fairly exponentially because of the things we have to pay for and personnel costs and things like that. So we have to bring those two lines back together, and we're working on doing that. As much as I hate to do it, we're increasing the revenue side. And I've never taken a no tax pledge, but I said we're going to do everything else first, and we tried to do everything else first. But we're going to continue to have to look at what we can do for efficiencies. Many of you and your businesses are doing that with AI. We're going to have to do that in county government too, and make sure we're right-sizing county government to fulfill those duties that we're mandated to do. So we still have work to do on that, but the county's overall financial state is good. We have, as Ray said, more in reserve than almost any time in history. We just have to make sure that those cost and expenditure lines are brought together. I still think there's some work on the efficiency side, and we're going to continue to do that this year. And the other thing, during that time when we weren't raising taxes and fighting to keep them down, we were asking for the legislature to provide us options, which is really basically right now counties and other municipalities only have property taxes. It would be the easiest thing in the world for the state to say, okay, counties and municipalities and school boards, you can have other revenue options like a sales tax, but the state's not going to mandate it. You get to choose that, and the people of your county can choose what they want to do. That would be very easy. The argument used to be against that it's logistically challenging. Well, we have computers now and AI now. So you could implement a countywide sales tax, and then you would have to reduce your property tax dollar for dollar by doing that, or some other form of revenue. And you could just lobby your 3 commissioners to do that rather than going to Harrisburg and lobbying hundreds of legislators. I think that's very easy. I've been saying that for years. I wish that we could do that so that we could get away with this property tax thing. I hate sitting with senior citizens who have spent their whole life paying off their house, and now they're concerned about losing it because of property taxes. So I hope someday we see that change.
With extra time to spare.
Are you going to sell it to one of us too? All right, well, great. So I agree with my colleagues around the area of the work that's been done for many, many years in our county through the leadership of other county commissioners as well as the staff in terms of looking at how how to increase our reserves, which we are really healthy compared to other counties within the state of Pennsylvania. So mostly, I would say a majority of the counties across the state are going through something similar to us at different levels and different intensities. And we are in a much better place than where they are in terms of where we are right now. But I would say in terms of the specific question about how do you balance short-term financial pressures and long-term fiscal responsibility, I do believe my first year last year with the budget that we just finished in 2025, I was concerned about where we were sitting in terms of our reserves and in terms of understanding how much revenue we bring in and what do we have to our expenses are, and to balance that out. So last year's budget, on its face value, we weren't able to balance. We used reserves and we used one-time funds for 2025. So that kind of raises a flag for anyone that's worked with budgets and understands financials, even at home. If you spend more money last year and you got to figure out another way to, bring in more to be able to do what you want to do at home. Moving forward, I would say that like as I mentioned, we're in better shape than a lot of other counties. My main point that I've been raising over the past couple of months, I don't want to rehash all the details. Some of you have been familiar with it, but those of you who are not, that what I was surprised about in the last couple of years that I've been in this role is compared to private sector. I would really like to for us. I think it's going to be helpful to do more long-term planning than has been done in the past. And again, it's not unusual for some counties across the state to not plan as much into the future, but there are again many other counties too that do that, and I think that's going to be helpful for us to kind of answer the question about how we look at this. I have a difficult time thinking about how we plan for 1 year without looking into the future. So the other thing that I really am looking forward to doing this year is to put together a strategic plan. In the past, when I've worked in the private sector, there has always been a live current document about a strategic plan. When you have to make difficult decisions related to the budget and where to cut, where to look for efficiencies and all, it's important to turn towards what are our priorities and where does where we are right now fit into those priorities. And is there a little bit of a mission creep that we would maybe need to cut back on to help make those decisions? I would find them really helpful to me, specifically now that in the coming years it's going to be a more difficult budget than it has been in other years. So with the strategic plan, we'll have a good idea what our mission, vision, guiding principles. There hasn't been one done for over a decade in our county, and I think that would be really helpful with us making those difficult decisions moving forward. Along with that, I think that one of the things that within the strategic plan that we'll wind up doing through the process is we'll be able to look at all our departments and be really clear on what their purposes, what their mandates are, and what are the goals that we think about for the future. Are we okay with how we're measuring, how we're doing, whether it's children and youth, BHDS, whether it's the planning department, whether it's our parks and recs? What is it that the community and taxpayers want us to do? How do we measure that, and how do we say this is where we are and this is where we need to go? I think we have some opportunity to do a better job at reporting what it is that we need to do, what's our progress, what are our goals, so that I get concerned about thinking about cutting back on anything if I'm not clear on them. And I think at this point we have an opportunity to be more clear on how are we impacting the community, how are we improving the value for taxpayers. As it crosses all of our departments, I think there's an opportunity to look at that. And through this whole process, I also think that it's important to have your input. Like, we need to hear more from you early on. So I'm really encouraged about starting the budget process early, internally, to get the data together and more information. And then as we move into halfway through the year, start talking more publicly about this is where we are, this is what we're seeing, and what do you think? These are our options. These are tough decisions. This was not an easy year. This was really, really difficult. If you didn't pick up on that in terms of public discourse, it definitely was for, I think, all three of us. And so for me, to have other people think about maybe scenario planning. We could do this, we could do that, or we could do this. What do you think would be a good way that we need to go? So I would really look for that in the new year and starting some of that early. And I think that will help us as we start thinking about our decisions we need to make for our 2027 budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for your cooperation. We're at our final question on behalf of Hourglass, and then we'll hand it over to our audience. We're allocating 3 minutes per speaker, and I believe my last combination will start with Commissioner Parsons, Yoder, and D'Agostino to finish. I know recent news has come out about the budget for the county jail. We're curious just to hear a little bit more about your thoughts and potential challenges with that project. So a little more open-ended, if you could just speak to that project a little bit further.
Sure. Well, it's exciting to have it beginning to take shape. For those who haven't followed along, our 1850s era prison out on that side of the town has for a long time needed to be replaced. It's been kind of added on to over the years. We're spending a lot of money just to keep it safe and usable. And so for many years, really since the 80s, they've talked about a new prison. Since I've been on the board, we've been moving forward with that in a very careful and deliberate way, which I think is prudent and appropriate, and I think has paid off. The first big step was land acquisition, which if you head south just about a half mile or so, and you come to the Distal Think Tavern, some people call it the Dirty Old Tavern, as you're leaving town on your left, back in there, you would never even know, but there is about a 70-acre field surrounded by woods. 3 sides river, 1 side cemetery. It has to be close to the courthouse because it's prison, so it's about as good a site as you can possibly get for a prison. We were able to acquire that. We were only allowed to pay fair market value, and we were able to do that. Lancaster Township, which it is in, has been very collaborative. We appreciate that. And the process has gone just very well from my perspective. Usually when you talk about a project like this, you anticipate having hundreds of people in your meeting. And really, the community has been on board with this, I think, because we've articulated the need for it. And also, even the neighbors have been collaborative, and they've been part of the planning process. And each stage along the way, we have sought public feedback and had listening sessions, and we've incorporated that feedback. We're in the design phase right now, and we're working through that. And I think it's gone about as smoothly as a project like this can. I will say that there are, even this most recent story that came out had a number of false statements in there which needed to be corrected. We have been united, the 3 of us, all along. This has been a unanimous project, all the votes, as have the previous boards that have been involved on this. There's also an idea that if somehow we moved faster, the cost wouldn't be as great. That is just not true. You have to do the planning right, and I think you have to get the size right, and that involves public debate and input. When they built the Youth Intervention Center, they built it too big, and I'm not. That's just a fact. So we don't want to build it too big. We don't want to build it too small. We want to have that debate and make sure we're understanding where the county's going, where criminal justice is going, and do it right. So that ultimately this is about public safety and making sure we take care of the public safety of the county for the next 100 years. And when people come to jail and then they leave us, as the vast majority of people do, that they're leaving better and they're not coming back, and we're lowering recidivism. So I think overall the project's gone well. We're going to continue to work through it carefully and prudently.
Thank you.
That's a quick 3 minutes. I could see you speaking faster and faster as you're going on. All right, so I got to get going. So I agree with Commissioner Parsons in terms of how deliberate and what we've done from getting public feedback and public comments on the project. And I feel at this point, most of the feedback that we got early on, at least I think it was 1 listening session before I came on board as commissioner, and then I've been here for 2 years, and then there was an additional 4. So there was 5 listening sessions from the public. And I would say 90% of the comments and feedback that we were getting from the public had a lot to do with the court side of things, so not necessarily what's going to happen within the prison and the physical facility itself. And then we kept hearing a lot of the same themes. And then when we started getting more firm, and certainly with the design phase that we're in right now, and what we just had a public listening session last week. Was this week? Was it this week? It was this week. Okay. Times changes around here. Okay, so we just had one, and there was some affirmation about the people that really had concerns came to the listening session and really felt that what they were asking for was really in the design that we're looking at now. And I feel really confident too. I was early on a big advocate for, we know a good portion of our people that are in our prison have mental health issues, and we also have people that have substance use disorder, addiction issues, and then there are people that come there, made a bad mistake one time, perhaps lost their job, and then committed some sort of minor crime. And so the whole idea of providing adequate space that we don't have the ability to do now in the current prison, the employees as well as the leadership at the prison are all for doing a lot of work to help people as they enter the prison, then to really cut down on recidivism. The space is really confined. So that's been my main focus coming into this role and advocating for. And I really do feel if you get a chance to look at the design, you'll see that there's really good space for this to happen in a trauma-informed way in terms of the design. So I feel really good where we're at right now. And I do feel like we're ready to get rolling. So when I think about community-given input, when I think about evidence-based practices, when I think about all the consultants that we brought in so far to date, we have the information we need to think about moving forward. I think this design we're seeing before us is a really good design. The staff has been so engaged, a lot of tabletop exercises to make sure that operationally it'll work out. You do the best you can with the layout you have before you. And the staff has been really committed and has changed things over time. But I think it's at a really good space for us to be able to do the work we need to do inside the prison so that when people are released, that they feel some hope when they're being released, but that the community is also safe. And the main thing is the measurement of recidivism, because we have a high rate of people that are in and out of the prison, and we need to do something to stop that. And what the evidence and the research has shown across the country is to really have a big impact while they are in the prison with those programs. So I feel good about that in the design at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I agree with my colleagues, and I'll just try to say something a little bit different and maybe put some more context into this. So I've been in favor of, when I was running for commissioner, I took a tour, I talked to folks, and it became very evident we needed a new correctional facility. So that's not a question. Look, it's the largest project in the county's nearly 300-year history. From a size standpoint of the physical nature of the building, from the cost, but also the community impact. I mean, we're talking about public safety, of course. It's first and foremost why this is necessary, but also in terms of the lives of the people who stay there and the people who work there. So it's a huge impact. It is a 365, 24/7 facility. It's public safety, of course, oriented, but it's an institution that has a commitment aspect to it, that is housing and caring for people. That adds a certain level of complexity that most organizations don't have to deal with, quite frankly. And, you know, in the context of paying for this, which we're going to have to do, it's important to know that we've paid over $100 million down of debt over the last 10 years. Our county debt was pretty high, and it coming down is going to help us, quite frankly, going into the future. And let's not forget, we're a government entity. I wish we could do things a little quicker sometimes. I've worked in the private sector. But we have rules to follow. If we don't follow them, we get in trouble. Then you, the taxpayer, get in trouble. We don't want that to happen. So with that as a backdrop, I want to give you a sort of a continuum. So I believe we're in a good spot. I truly believe that. But let's look at a continuum. So on the one side, we could have rushed things and still met the requirements of state and federal laws. So we could have actually just hired an architect, said, design us something, here's the size, design us something, we'll put it out to bid and we'll build it. That is a way to do this. That's on the one end of the spectrum. That would have been wrong, but it's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is a paralysis by analysis, which is that you keep, analyzing this and then, well, something changed. Well, yeah, the longer you go, something does change. And, on that end of the spectrum, I can tell you there's a county near us who has put off their project indefinitely. Same project, because I will think it's an analysis, a paralysis by analysis. So we're somewhere, obviously, in the middle of that, where we should be. to the point that we have been hearing from experts. Now imagine this, no needs assessment would have been done if we're on that other end of the spectrum. No programming, looking at how the needs assessment fits into a building design before we even start putting pen to paper. We've been able to do that with experts, going back to the context I just mentioned, why it's important to do it that way, and getting public feedback, because as Commissioner Parsons said, typically these projects have a little bit of a problem getting through, which are necessary, but because it wasn't done right. I think we're in a really good spot. I think we can also look at how we're going to pay for it in a way that will help the taxpayers because of the things I said in my last comments. I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, well, we'd love to pass it off to our audience to ask any questions. Forgive me, I'm not in my usual spot, so if it takes me a little while to get to you, just be patient. Who here has a question? Wonderful. Anyone else? Okay, we'll come this direction. If you have a question to a specific commissioner, please make that known, but otherwise we'll assume it's for each of them to answer.
Commissioner Parsons, you referenced suicide rates being down dramatically. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I didn't, not overall in the county. That may be the case. I don't know. I have to look at that. But prison suicides, when I came in, we were having multiple a year, I think as many as 3, 4 a year, which is obviously a tragedy for the inmate, but it's really hard on the staff. And also the county often gets sued when that happens. And so we worked really hard at the whole prison organization to professionalize it. And we put in a new warden who's been great. I think you've probably heard from her at times, Cheryl Stieberger. She's an awesome leader. And one of the things we worked on was basically going over every possible thing that you can do to prevent suicide. So that may be physical changes with the physical plant, which is tough because we have a really old facility. But a lot of it has to do with training for the staff. It could also be additional equipment that they wear, which we've done. So if someone attempts to hang themselves and you find them, you have the right equipment to get them down very fast. But it also has to do with mental health work. And, we've just done a lot more of that around reentry when people are coming back into the community, but also just dealing with their mental health and stabilizing it there. We, as some of you may know, when the state hospital shut down, county jails ended up with people with really serious mental health problems. And some of them should be there because they're dangerous, but some of them are just there because there's not, another place. And so all of these things together and a laser focus on that issue really made a difference. I don't want to say we're never going to have one because if somebody's really determined, no matter where they are, they can do that. But I'm proud of the team and what they've done because every life has value. And some of those people that we've saved have come, they've changed their lives and then they've come back and been very thankful. So, it's something that doesn't get talked a lot about, but those correctional officers out there and the team really work hard on it. So you all should know about that.
Okay, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate your comments, very much so. For Commissioner D'Agostino, you kind of mentioned it about micro transit and looking into that, which is so important to get people to employers that are not on the Red Rose transit system. So if you can just talk a little bit more about that or where that stands and the thoughts behind that. And anybody can answer this other question is, obviously the prison costs a lot of money. I know we're going to float some bonds on that. Can you tell me what % of the money you hope to raise from bonds, and then where does the rest of the money come from? What buckets does it come from, and percentage-wise?
Okay, with respect to microtransit, I'm not going to assume everybody understands what that is, but if I said like a public sector version of Uber and Lyft, that kind of gives you an idea. And this is something that's been happening around the country, quite frankly, that first piloted in many communities and now actually embedded in many communities as a part of their transit system. Look, our transit system here hasn't really effectively changed since its founding about 75 years ago. Big buses, fixed routes, along the corridors. Okay, well, things have changed in 75 years, right? And during the last time, this past process that SCTA went through to look at transit services in Lancaster. And I've been through this, with, being in the county for many years. And people kept saying that we needed to do something a little different to get to your point. We need people who can get from point A to point B. Point A to B, maybe their house, or from somewhere else to a job, and then back and whatnot, medical appointments. And look, we have grown tremendously. Those corridors are obviously not the only way that people get through to where they're going. And so I and others were pretty vocal with the transit authority saying, look, we got to look at this. We got to look at doing something different. We got to look at how we serve all of the people. This is all the people's tax money. And to their credit, they said, okay, well, let's do a microtransit feasibility study. And so that's what's in process now. We're almost done. There's a draft. There are some pilot areas that we're looking at piloting microtransit. And that could happen as early as by the end of this year. It could be the beginning of next year because of, again, it's tax dollars and federal and state requirements. But I'm really happy that we're looking at this because I think it could be a game changer in terms of how we move people around this county for the needs. With respect to the financing of the prison, I think you ought to know that because of those reserves and that capital improvement fund, we have not 1 cent of borrowed money has been used to get to the point where we are today, on the precipice of building a county prison. We've been using our own money, and it's helped save, quite frankly, money overall. And so we have already put skin in the game. Your skin, your tax dollars are in this project right now to a significant level. I'm not sure how much money more we're going to be able to put in. We've got a little bit of ways to go. We've got another almost $10 million in costs that we're looking to have to take on, and again, not using borrowed money. So the project will be largely done in terms of the construction, and that's the way we looked at it. We looked at it from beginning to end. How are we going to finance this? And it has been, look, the construction piece is the biggest piece, and we're going to have to finance it. Now, there's a lot of different ways and mechanisms to finance this, to ease a large project like this into the county's budget. It's not as simple as saying we're going to borrow whatever, hundreds of millions of dollars, and this is what it's going to cost every year. There's ways to actually ease this into the county's overall budget. That's why we have a financial advisor, quite frankly, on board right now to help our team figure this out along with our underwriters.
Commissioner Parsons or Commissioner Yoder, do you have any further comments on that second question from Liz, or we can move along to another one?
No, I agree with that.
Okay. Same for you.
Yeah, same here. I'm glad that we have a financial advisor that we're bringing on to help us with it. But I do believe at this point we are looking at bonds and seriously, how we can do that. And then also at the same time, because we have money in reserves, how are we looking at our investments to try to pull that in, which we have been doing for years. But is there a strength in being able to do that even further? And that's where we can find something that we haven't been able to pick up so far, where we can look at how we can finance it.
Thank you. I'm confirming we don't have any questions through the live stream at this point. Those of you who are watching through the live stream, you can submit questions and we'll make sure that they get asked. We have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions, depending on how heavy they are. So I see you back here, and then we'll bring it up to Art, if you don't mind just passing this back.
No, it was for me. Want to make sure I'm being respectful. So, Andrew from Habitat for Humanity and the Pew Foundation or Charitable Trust, whatever they go to, Pew, put out a study last year about the building capacity for residential homes throughout the country, and they ranked them all. In the last 10 years, Pennsylvania was ranked 44th out of all 50 states in adding new homes to build up, to the expectations of the demand that's out there. They also specifically called out zoning as a major limitation for the Commonwealth in providing more units and to meet that demand. It's obviously affected, home prices, availability, first-time home buyers getting in, and people just relocating and moving if they so choose. Now, zoning is a very local thing for all the other municipalities, the townships and boroughs and so forth, but what kind of dialogue is there about trying to overcome that challenge that's happening right now in the county?
I guess I can start on that. I think many of you know, including Andrew, that this is a space I worked in for many years, and I'll probably be a broken record to some degree, but it's important to note that housing is the most, and I want somebody to challenge me on this. I think housing is the most regulated commodity, if you will, in the country. It's even more regulated in water, believe it or not. Like if you want to drill a well, you don't need a permit necessarily. I mean, there are more regulations at every single level, from the local up to the federal level, that impact housing. Why is that important? Well, first of all, it drives up cost. There are studies that show that somewhere between 30 and 40% of the cost of a home are due to regulations. Look, I'm not saying cut all regulations. Let's be clear. There are some that are obviously good. But when's the last time we did an analysis to say, well, how's that impacting things, and is it really worth the value that we're, or the negative value of that regulation? And I can tell you, along with others, that you'll find a lot of ways to be able to actually cut time and money to get more housing done. As you mentioned, the local level, that's what we have. We're a Commonwealth. I can't, none of us can do anything about that. All we can do is the power of persuasion, which is to work with our municipalities, if you will. I say, if you will, persuasion. It is to say, look, here's an analysis. Here's the things that can help drive what everybody seems to want, which is responsible growth and development at the same time of preserving farmland. A lot's been said. A lot's been studied, a lot's been done. And we're actually doing a lot better than we have in the past with respect to that. Do we have more room to go? Yes. Our planning department works with municipalities on their comprehensive plans. In fact, we've been helping them write them. And then also reviewing the ordinances to see how we can actually achieve the things that we want. So that's very important. And I think that's something that we need to continue to do. I don't know if there was that. Any answer? Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to add on the note about what the planning department's been doing too, from a practical standpoint. I think, Andrew, you know this, but everyone else might not know this, but there is a document on the website that the planning department put together with municipalities throughout the county, so it was not just done in the office. It's a simplified zoning toolkit. So again, we can't tell municipalities what to do, but check the toolkit out, because it really gives specifics in terms of a municipality, whatever their interest is, to move the needle and to move it along in terms of what they've been doing. I know just in the last several months, Lidditz Borough has taken pieces of that, and when they've changed some of the rules there and their ordinances. And so I think if every municipality starts picking up on one or two of those, that would be helpful. But I think I'd like to just pull us back to the homelessness and housing strategic plan, because it is going to have a big element of homelessness, but it's also going to intersect with the affordable housing piece of when people get to permanent supportive housing, and then they start thinking about workforce housing, because many people that are homeless actually are some of the people that might be at your coffee shop that you didn't even realize they didn't have a roof over their head. So that plan will actually be pointing out what are the things that's in our control. Well, first of all, a little bit, but some of it from a technical assistance from a commissioner's standpoint, that we can advise on and say, this is what we can think about doing by providing evidence-based practices, or what some things that they can do, but it's up to the municipalities. But it will point to also what we need the state to look at, because part of the planning for the strategic plan related to homelessness and housing, we talked to builders. We just had a focus group a couple of weeks ago with some of our key builders in the area to say, what do you think needs to happen so that you can build faster? And let's cut to the chase, and the plan will have that outlined. And the things that the state needs to change, because our arms are tied and we can't do it, but we know it would have a big impact. I think the thing that I'd like to add to this is that just listening to myself just saying this and listening, Ray, to what you were saying, it's like things have to happen a lot faster, because housing for people of all income levels is the issue in terms of being able to just more housing so people can move into the next level of housing if they can. But on the affordability side, it's just not financially feasible to get the number of units that we need at the cost that it is right now. So we have to start thinking seriously about how we're going to solve for that, and we have to do something different. And again, that's what I'm hoping is going to be really clear in the plan. The plan's not going to say who's going to do it. It's not going to say that the county's doing it. It's probably not going to say that the redevelopment's going to have a piece to it, but they're not going to have an answer. It's going to be a broader community answer, and that's where I said earlier that we're going to have to say, do we really want to solve for this in the next 3 years, 5 years, or are we going to just keep on plugging along for 10 years to see we're in the same situation? We'll have this conversation years from now and still be saying the same thing, because we have some small things that can work, but I think there's going to be there needs to be some innovative, creative strategies that we need to do moving forward.
I would just add, I mean, this isn't my area of expertise, it's more Ray's, but from my perspective, the collaboration with township officials, borough officials is greater probably than it's ever been. At least that's my general take on it with our planning department. And you're right, they decide zoning. William Penn set it up that way. We have 60 municipalities in Lancaster County, and they guard their power jealously, and I understand that. So the onus is on us to work with them and be collaborative, and I think that's going really well with the planning department. I would say from a big picture, I think our county is getting things right. It's not perfect, and there's debates about growth versus preservation and these things, and those debates are healthy, but our county is growing. It's not growing as much as we thought a few years ago. It's actually growing at a decent pace, and we think going out into the future, it's not going to be growing at a crazy amount, but a couple percent. There's a lot of counties in Pennsylvania that are shrinking. They're dying. You don't want to be one of those counties. We're a vibrant county. People want to live here. But the home price issue, I think, is a serious issue. We want people to be homeowners. We want them to be invested in the community. And if you talk to young people, there's not too many young people here, they're getting really pretty radical on both sides of the political spectrum. And part of it is because they can't afford anything. And it is, if you look at the medium home prices these days, I don't know how, if you have student loans and stuff, I don't know how you do it. And so I don't have any solutions to that. It's a market-driven problem, and it's an inflation-driven problem. But we've got to figure out a way that, I got 3 boys, I hope that if they want to live by their mom and dad, that they can live here in Lancaster County someday. But I'm not sure with the way the costs are.
That was our timer.
I was just taking the mic from Art.
I do want to honor your question. If we could just get a 1-minute response from one person. I know that's kind
Speed
of a rough
round.
thing, but
It's a little bit off the wall. If I sell my house, I have to buy it. I need title insurance. It's never made any sense to me that the county provides the titles, and then we pay somebody, a third party, to guarantee that the title's correct. Why don't you have that as a service and say, $200, we guarantee your title's correct, and you press a button and say, yep, it's there.
You better talk to the legislature on that, I think.
I've been asked a lot of questions in this job. I've never been asked that one. I will ask Ann Hess, our recorder of deeds, and try to figure that out.
okay. I think that's all the time we have today. Another round of applause. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Something that not just one, not just two, but multiple people said to me on their way in today is that this is either their favorite forum that we do all year, something they look forward to all year, and something that they were really looking forward to today. So I want to thank you all for your time, making yourselves available to us. I'm very proud that this is a forum that we get to do annually and one that we've gotten cooperation on each year for you all to participate in. I think the most important thing for the Hourglass is that we don't necessarily have to follow national narratives on how to get along. We can do things differently. And so we continue to bring leaders and the public together so that we can solve problems and have conversations in a civil way. And so I just want to thank you all, audience and commissioners, for your cooperation with that. I really appreciate it. Just a quick announcement, we'll see you back in February in our normal room, but it does sound like people really like being up here, so that's good feedback. Well, a video next week will be available with a video recording of today's session. Please send that to folks if you think that they might be interested. Maybe this will become their favorite forum in the future if they're not part of it. Thank you all again. Have a great weekend, and thanks for being here.